quick, you know, it's being a part of this church for me has been a tremendous blessing, all the way around. I mean, well, first I want to start out the youth today, man. You guys did an awesome job. They did an awesome job, right? Yeah, yeah. It's so exciting for me to see I've talked about this with Jonah before. I'm like, man, Jordan and these guys up here, they make me just want to keep playing songs. Like they just worship God like freely, and it is encouraging. It's exciting, but I can't stress enough how encouraging it is. And so we talked about getting them up here because during worship we get to see their faces, and I can't express how much it blesses me, you guys, honestly, to see you guys, to watch you guys worship God. It's exciting. You know, Jonathan, he's my little brother. I've known him since, since about the time he was learning to walk. I've known him for a long time. Well, he's my wife's little brother, and getting to watch him grow up has been a blessing for sure. And getting to see him grow into being a man and to being a man of God and to being a leader, it's such a blessing. It's an honor. It's humbling, and I mean that all the way around. Like I'm by nature, I'm an observer. Like I just am. I just love to observe people, and on Sundays, it's tremendous all the way around from everyone here. I mean, Sister Gloria, she greets you with that excitement. It's like, for me, it's like going to my grandma's house. Like, that's what it feels like when I walk in, and she's like, so good to see you. She gives me a hug, It's that feeling I had when I was young. Also, the pastors, I've been married to their daughter for a long time. I can't do that math that quickly in my head. Not that I don't know when we got married. We got married in 2005. I remember that. But the pastors have been parents to me, and that's been a blessing, and that's been super humbling, to have people that love you like your own kid. You know what I mean? They have. They've always loved me like I was one of their own. They've loved me through me being an idiot and doing stupid things, things that I'm super embarrassed about, and things I won't necessarily share because my kids are here. But, they've always shown me that love of Christ, that love of God, and have been a tremendous blessing to me, And so I'm so grateful for that love is a reflection of Christ. It is a reflection of how God loves us. And, I can't get over that. So, just kind of wanted to express that. For you youth, since you're up here, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit. But, a couple things I want to express. We've got 4th of July coming up, right? It's this reminder of freedom. I think I have notes here, I hope. I hope this is the right one. And this reminder of freedom for me, what's going on? I'm easily distracted, so I apologize. Was the other one off? This one sounds different. It sounds different, right? To me, it does. It sounds like I'm talking. Anyway, okay. Freedom is a big thing, and that's something that we get to enjoy in this country, right? But, I started thinking about freedom, and it reminds me of a few things. And so, what sets us free, right? Truth sets us free. And consistency, responsibility, that's what maintains our freedom. And freedom allows us to fulfill the teachings of Jesus, okay? And I'll tell you what, that truth sets you free is a big one. I remember when I was a kid, man, I was a horrible student, like a really, really bad student. Like no matter what your stories are, I was pretty bad, and from a young age, and I just couldn't figure it out. Like I didn't like school. It wasn't for me. I struggled with school. I wasn't the smartest kid. I was distracted easily, right? So I'm that kid who's like staring out the window, didn't want to be there, not doing my homework. And I remember in fourth grade, I had the absolute meanest teacher, like just mean. She was this lady, and she was angry, and like, you know when you have these moments with people and you're upset, and then later you have like an opportunity to reflect back on what was going on, you're like, oh man, like that person had some serious stuff going on, you know? And later, I mean, this teacher was later told to me that her husband had passed away like during the school year while we were there. So I mean, she had some serious stuff going on, and then she has to deal with these like 9-year-old kids who just don't listen and do whatever they want, right? And so she would literally, I don't know with you guys, like when you turn in your homework, do you go turn it in? But she would have you open up your notebook, and she would walk desk by desk to see if you did your homework, and she would check it off like right there and grab it. So that like, it was embarrassing if you didn't have your homework, and she would start yelling at you, Mr. Cervantes, you didn't have your homework. But I had this like whole plot like figured out, because I would hear other kids line, and although I wasn't the smartest kid, I'm a fast learner, right? So I'm listening to these other kids like make up lies of why they don't have their homework, and she's just tearing it apart. Like, that's not your parents' responsibility. It's your responsibility. And so I'm like adapting my lie as she's coming to me because I don't have my homework. And she gets to me, and I had come up with this brilliant lie, and it worked for weeks on end. And I'd go, oh my goodness. Her name was Miss Marley. Miss Marley, I did all my homework. My mom said she was going to check it for me to make sure it was right and put it back in my bag. She must have forgot. She's really busy. And she bought it. I didn't get yelled at. And this went on like for weeks. And so one day I'm at the house, and I'm just minding my own business, hanging out watching TV, and I hear a car pull up outside, and it's Miss Marley. And I'll tell you what, it's that feeling, right, you have at any time in your life when you've been caught. You know what I mean? Where you've been caught, like you've messed up. Because there's times in our lives like we mess up, you're like, oh, my bad, I messed up. Oh, it's not that big of a deal. And then there's times where you mess up and you try to hide it. You know what I mean? You try to cover it. And then all of a sudden, it gets seen. You know what I mean? You get caught. And you know what I'm talking, you know that feeling I'm talking about, right? And so I had that feeling, and I'm 9 years old, and I'm just quickly like coming up with my next plan. I know I'm gonna run away. Like, that's my plan right now. I'm gonna run away. And I run to my room, and I grab my backpack, and I start throwing my clothes in there because I'm gonna dip out. And before I could get out of my room, my dad's right there. And he's like, hey, someone's here to see you. Man. And we go to the front, and the teacher had been in my desk. Man, that's my personal property, teacher. What are you doing at my desk? And she had found tons of crumpled up, not completed homework. And all of a sudden, I was faced with these lies upon lies of lying to my teacher, lying to my parents that I don't have this homework. And it was horrible. But you know what? The days after that is a freeing feeling. You know what I mean? Because when you're carrying around this stuff that you're hiding, it doesn't feel good. It eats you up. And Jesus talks about this a bit in John chapter 8. I should pull out I got my Bible right here, hopefully. Maybe. In John chapter 8, Jesus is talking to a group of people, and he tells them, is it up here? Jesus said to the people who believed in him, you are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And it's true, you know. The cool thing about truth, later, Jesus is trying to hint at something. He's really saying, I'll set you free. In a later chapter in John, a little bit later, Jesus says, I'm the way, I'm the truth. So Jesus is the truth. And that's an important thing because, again, when you learn in school, you learn that like commutative property, right? If A equals B, B equals C, then C equals A, right? You guys know what I'm talking about? Is that right? Did I get that right? All right. Hey, that's how it works with Jesus and truth. You know what I mean? Where you find Jesus, you find truth. And it works the other way, where you find truth. And by truth, I mean things that are good for you, things that are great for you. That's where you find Jesus. And it's all throughout it. And, this moment where it was just pure embarrassment, those next moments are very freeing. Now, what's cool when Jesus is talking about this, a little bit before he says this, there's a situation going on where he's talking to a group of people. And a woman caught in an act she shouldn't have been involved in gets brought up to him. I mean, she's caught. It's that moment where you're caught doing something you shouldn't have. And she's brought right over to him. Now, what's sad is the purpose that they're bringing this lady to Jesus isn't to better her life. It's just to trap Jesus. At the end of the day, they were only outing her situation and embarrassing her because they were trying to trap Jesus and trick him into saying something. And so they catch this woman doing something they shouldn't have done, that she shouldn't have done, and they bring her to Jesus and they say, what should happen with her? Now, throughout history, let me say this. Jesus was a real person. Jesus really existed. There's no denying that. He really did incredible things. There's no denying that. And we can get into the history of the world, and there's tons and tons of evidence that points that Jesus existed. And I feel Jesus doesn't get enough credit because this dude was a genius. Like, he really was. And when we talk about geniuses throughout history, we don't credit it with him. But he said these incredible things that made you think, that caused you to stop what you're thinking and gain a new perspective on things. And guys, I want to tell you that anytime you could gain a new perspective on something, it's huge, it's key, it's life transforming, it really is. When you could gain a different perspective of things and look at things a little bit differently, and that's what Jesus did. So right before this, Jesus is faced with this situation, and he says something genius. He goes, all right, you guys want to kill this person. You guys want to stone this person, that's fine. But whoever of you who's never done anything wrong, I want you to come up here. And in front of everybody, I'm paraphrasing, it doesn't say it exactly like this. In front of everybody, I want you to come up here and throw that first stone at her. And quickly everyone's like, right? Because if they come up there, they're coming up there and making a declaration that, hey, I haven't done anything wrong. And now all of a sudden it's in front of everybody. And what's everybody going to do? It's that old saying, right? If you live in glass houses, don't throw rocks, right? And so everybody leaves, and Jesus goes over to this lady, and he tells her, where are the people that have accused you, who condemn you? Where are they? They're not here. And he says, neither do I. Go and don't sin anymore. And it's so, to me, it's such a cool moment because it's part of Jesus' teachings, right? So right here, I don't know if we have it up. Jesus says, you are truly my disciple if you remain faithful to my teachings. What are Jesus' teachings? And when you dig into the things Jesus taught, it was things of redemption, it was things of salvation, and it was about forgiveness. And in this moment, he's giving her a moment of redemption. And I don't know if you can kind of grasp the moment other than think of the worst thing you have ever done that nobody has ever known. Think about that. All right, who wants to come up here and share first? Just kidding. But think about that. And then imagine on Sunday when pastor's up here speaking, a group of people just say, hold on. This person right here, you know what they did? And tells everybody that one thing you don't want anybody to know. Imagine the humiliation. Like that's as humiliating as it gets, But what Jesus does is he offers this woman redemption by quickly turning it around on everybody else. But hey, everyone here's messed up. Everyone has. And as much as he's talking to the group, he's talking to this woman. You know what I mean? Because it's so easy to say, man, he told the group, he changed a thought. No, but he's also talking to this woman. Listen, everyone's messed up. Everyone's done things that they're humiliated about, that they hope nobody ever finds out. Everyone has. And now they're not here to condemn you anymore. Go and don't sin anymore. And that's a moment of redemption. And what's so cool is that's what Jesus teaches is redemption. And like throughout history, like that's my favorite thing. Like, does anybody here like watching like who like binge watches shows? Anybody? I'm guilty of that, right? Like TV, movies. I love showing my kids older movies. That's like my favorite thing to do on the weekend is to just chill out, order some pizza, and show my kids some movies that I just loved to watch growing up, right? Like, this one's so good, you gotta see it. And I'll tell them about it, and I'll show them like 10 trailers of like different movies, like, we're watching one of these. But I'll tell you what, the greatest stories ever recorded, the greatest stories ever told, the best movies ever made are all about stories of redemption. They are. Like, if you think about your favorite movie, it's a story of redemption. If it's a fun sports thing, I think about Remember the Titans, layered with redemption, right? A city, so much stuff going on, and just darkness and hate, and it's a story of redemption solved through football, right? Or whether it's an action movie, one of my favorite movies is a Denzel movie called Man on Fire. It's a movie about redemption. It's this guy who had a chance to take it over. And this is what Jesus brought to people, is this opportunity for redemption. And so here in this, in chapter 8:31, where Jesus is telling us, he's saying, you're truly a disciple if you remain faithful to my teachings, right? And so it's so simple to think, okay, I'm going to be faithful. But what are his teachings? And they're teachings of redemption. They're teachings of salvation. They're teachings of forgiveness. And when you do that, that's when you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free, right? We talked about Jesus later goes on to say he's the truth. So truth allows us to have redemption. Truth allows us to have freedom. Freedom is such a cool thing. With freedom comes a lot of responsibility. It does. You know that? Freedom comes with tons of responsibility. When I was a kid, I would say things like, does anybody remember that when you're a little kid and kids are like, I can say whatever I want. This is a free country. I can do whatever I want. This is a free country, right? That was the thing. Like, we'd always say that. But with freedom comes like tons of responsibility. It really does. And, earlier I was talking about some of the things, the pastors have shown me love no matter what. I won't go into the details of it, but the pastors had to bail me out of jail one time, okay? And that's embarrassing, man. It is. It's embarrassing. That's my wife's parents. That's my pastors having to come pick me up from jail because there's nobody else. Like, my parents live far away. There's no one else. No one else is coming. This is who I have to call. And they love me through that. And if we can throw up Galatians 5:1. Jesus talks about, or this is Paul writing here, and he talks about the reason Jesus set us free. He set us free for the sake of freedom, right? It's for freedom that Christ has set us free. So stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. That word yoke is interesting. I don't know if all of you guys know what that is, but at that time, what would happen is a lot of people were farmers, okay? A lot of people were farmers, and they had their oxen to till their field. And this yoke was a device that went over the oxen that tied them to the other oxen. And so if two oxen were working together, they needed to be about the same size, right? Because if you had one big old oxen tied to a little oxen, it's just going to drag that little oxen all over the field, and your field's going to be a mess, right? So the Bible talks about being equally yoked. Got to hang out. That's a different thing. But Jesus is using this word yoke as a metaphor, and he's talking about how sin can make you feel like a slave, and it can bind itself around you. And the reason I bring up the story of the time I got arrested, because first of all, if you guys know me, like, people call me a germaphobe. I'm not at all. I'm not afraid of germs. I got a bottle of Lysol in the car, okay? I know how to deal with them. There's nothing scary about germs at all. I do, though, have a really healthy respect for germs, okay? It's something that I'm trying to work through because it limits me and causes embarrassment for my family at times, okay? I've been at Wendy's and made a fuss over something stupid, and I'm trying to like calm. Not that extreme, but I don't have a problem saying like, hey man. That's the thing I don't like about Wendy's is like you order your I'm gonna go into this. You order your food, right, and then they just put it on this counter, and they're like, we'll call you when it's ready. And then all these other people with their kids are now standing over your food and like breathing on it and coughing. And I'm just like, someone's coughing on my fries right now. Like, I can't have this. I need a refund right now. And so I have these things that I don't like. And so I'm not really sure if jail's germ friendly or not. Okay, so it was a moment where I'm like, am I going to be able to stand here all night? I don't know, but I'm going to try. I'm going to stand right here. And I'll never forget, I met someone there, and it was this guy. He was nice. He was friendly. And he was talking to me, and he was like, hey, why are you here? I'm like, oh, like, why are you here? And so this guy's like, I'm here for stealing cable. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I hook up illegal cable for people. Like, that's what I do. They call me the cable guy. And I'm like, all right. And then he's like, hold on real quick. And he's like trying to give me his information. And he's like, this is my third time being here for getting caught hooking up illegal cable. And I'm like, what? He's like, this time I'm going to be here for a few months. And I'm like, oh, okay. So what are you gonna do when you get out? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, for work. Like, what are you going to do when you get out of here? And he goes, I'm going to install cable. I'm the cable guy. Like, he was so committed to it. And at the time, I thought it was funny, and I come out of there, and I'm laughing. But you know what? When I think about it, it's someone who's bound by the irresponsibility of their freedom. You know what I mean? And when you have freedom, you have responsibilities, right? And so someone who has been in jail or who's been locked up or who has been a slave or whatever, when you have a chance at freedom, that's your chance at redemption, but it's also a responsibility to do what you need to do. And it's so crazy because nobody trusts people with their freedom. No one does, right? I'm a parent. There's so much freedom you give your kids, right? Because you understand that there's real consequences to the things that go on. I'm a parent, and I haven't always gotten it right, I'll say that. I'm determined to. That's why I have so many. Get it right with the next one, right? So I haven't always gotten it right. I've had an opportunity where I get to work with youth and teens. I've worked with the Boys and Girls Club for a long time. And if there's one thing I know about kids, one thing that I've learned, that when they're put in a situation they've never been in and they don't know how to handle, they're probably going to do the wrong thing. They probably are, right? And so as a parent, that's one thing I've had to learn and how to balance of how to teach my kids what's right and give them examples of different situations and let them experience life a little bit so they can learn what to do in situations. Because that's the truth. When you get in situations you haven't been in before, you're going to handle it wrong. I mean, I still do it as an adult. I'm pushing 40. And there's times, man, there's times, and I apologize if any of you have been on the other side of this. There's times where I walk out of here, I walk out of work, I get in my car, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just say? Why did I say that? That is embarrassing. Oh my gosh. And it happens, you know. And right, the government doesn't trust us with our freedom. That's why there's so many rules. But God gave us freedom for the sake of giving us freedom, for the sake of you being able to make these decisions for your own. Where's it at? Is it up here still? I don't remember it. It's all right. I got it somewhere. So he says, stand firm and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery. Because I'll tell you what, sin is something, and I tell my kids this because stuff I've seen in my family, it's stuff I've seen in my life, right? Like, sin is something that'll get a hold of your life and it won't let go. It just won't. It doesn't matter what it is, right? You've told one lie, you got to cover that up. You got to tell another lie. You got to tell another lie. All of a sudden, this lie is getting bigger, and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to rob a bank, right? Like, it just escalates like so quickly. But it's like that with everything, man. It is. You know, I grew up in a small town. There wasn't many things to do, and a lot of people, you know, used drugs and drank and did this stuff, and And I have friends in my life, man. There's this one guy in particular I grew up with, and I grew up, my school was 99.5% Hispanic. So everyone was short, okay? Like 5'11" is the max. We had the tallest Mexican dude I've ever seen in my life. He was on the basketball team. He was like 6'4". He was the dude in high school. Recently, my family, we moved back to, in 2020, we moved to California for a little bit, just temporarily. And I was in line with my family at McDonald's, and this dude that I went to high school with, who had it all together, he was homeless outside of a McDonald's asking for food and having substance abuse problems. And it hit me hard, man, because I have family who struggle with that, and it's something that'll get a hold of your life, and it just won't let go. Like, it just won't. It's not going to let go. Like, you have to experience true freedom. You have to experience Jesus. You have to experience a moment where you say, hey, you know what? I need truth in my life. I need Jesus in my life. That's it. Because outside of that, it's not going to let go of you. And these are things that I think about when my kids go anywhere. And my kids, I'll tell you, I think it's less than 5 people total where they've stayed the night at someone's house. I'm super protective of my kids. And I think, well, who's going to be there? Who are their parents? Do I know their parents? This or that, right? Because I know that if they're in a moment that they haven't been in before, they can make a decision that's the wrong decision. And then that freedom that they have to make that decision ends up holding them a captive for the rest of their life. And because it will. And this is what Jesus is telling, this is what Paul is saying, that Jesus has set us free just for the sake that you can have that freedom. But you have to be responsible with it. The opposite of freedom is bondage. There's a simple thing. There's a couple rules that I've always had that are very simple. Anytime I've worked with youth, anytime I've been anywhere, there's 2 things. Well, really, this is the first rule. Is just be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. It's the simplest rule. And I'll tell you what, if you guys stick to that in your life, it will save you so much heartache. It's simple. Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. And you can break it down. If you're at church camp, you go with somebody. Are you supposed to be in girls' rooms at any time? No, right? Be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. It's such a simple thing. And so what I've kind of turned that with my kids, and I'll tell you what, the biggest advantage in life, the biggest advantage you could have over anybody is just simply doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. It's true. Just doing what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it. This past year, I finished up school. For the first time, right? I'm old. I was supposed to do it a long time ago. And I remember sitting in some of these classes. I was taking classes at the community college. And I remember sitting there thinking, man, these guys are so lucky. They've got all these advantages. They live with their parents. They just have a part-time job. They got to go hang out with their friends. And I'm here struggling to barely provide for my family. Working part-time jobs, right? Going to school. 8 o'clock, 6 to 8:40, 9 o'clock. I've been up since 5 in the morning, and now I'm in school till 9 o'clock at night. And I remember just thinking, this just isn't fair. They've got these advantages. And then it hit me. Like, you had that opportunity too, and you just wasted it. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. And that's when it hit me that if you simply just do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, it's a huge advantage over everybody. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be all right, okay? At the end of the day, it's going to be okay. I know some of the parents might not be happy with this, but the truth is, if you're a bad student, it's not the end of the world. You're going to get through it. That's the truth. It's not, at this age, it's not really what you do. The important thing is how you do it and why you do it. That's the biggest thing, is how you do it and why you do it. So like I said, when I was a little kid, I was a bad student, lying. It just translated into high school. I ditched school so much. I never went. Any chance I got, I was skipping out of there. I was going to hang out with my friends. We were going to the beach. We were going to do whatever. I hated school. And in fact, it was so bad. Like a week before graduation, we had to go to the attendance office to see how many missed, unexcused absences you had. And from spring break to the end of the year, I had 40 unexcused absences. And I'm sitting there like a dummy, and I'm like, okay, so what do I do? And the attendance lady's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, what do I do about this? And she's like, nothing, you're not graduating. And I'm like, okay, that's funny, but seriously, what do I got to do? And she's like, no, that's it, you're not graduating. Fortunate enough, I was able to graduate. But I'll tell you what, being a bad student today, it doesn't matter. But I'll tell you what does matter is all the bad habits that I picked up. I had a lot of bad habits where I would just not do homework, lie about not doing the things I was supposed to do, finding the easy way out. That was my big thing, is always trying to find a shortcut. I know some of my kids are my kids because when we leave, they're like, Dad, let's take a shortcut. And I'm like, no, there's no shortcuts, right? There's no shortcuts in life. But that was me as a kid. I was always looking for a shortcut. And I'll tell you what, those habits that I picked up were detrimental to my life. Like, they really impacted me negatively. I was unsuccessful everywhere I went. People didn't want to be around me. I never got promoted where I worked. You know, I worked for a retail company for, like over 10 years. Over 10 years. And there was times I got demoted. I'm serious. There were times I got demotions where I took pay cuts, kind of willingly, but it's because of these bad habits that I picked up of where I was just looking for shortcuts. I was just looking for easy way out, and it doesn't happen. I'll tell you what, when you have the freedom to make choices, when you have the freedom to do what you want to do, the only way that you're going to maintain that freedom is with consistency and using responsibility. You have to be consistent. You work somewhere, you got to show up every day. I'm telling you what, if you're not a good student, that's fine. Show up every day. Show up every day. Do what the teacher asks you. Maybe you're not getting it. Maybe it's not sinking in. So what? I'll tell you what, at some point it's going to sink in. I don't know how old I was when I finally got reading down. Like, it took a long time. It's going to sink in at some point. You're going to get it. But it's those habits that you build of being consistent and showing up every day that's going to help you to be successful everywhere you go in life. And I'll tell you what, having to deal with that at 30 years old, man, that's embarrassing. Like, having to deal with that truth, like, man, I'm just not good at what I do. I'm just not. I'm just not good at anything. Why is that? And it's so easy to go, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. But it's because I was a slave to my irresponsibility. I was bound by the poor habits that I had made. And it will. You know, sin is a funny thing because, it's not funny at all. I take that back. It's not a funny thing. We're not laughing about this. Someone's laughing over there. They're uncomfortable. Just kidding. But it's so easy to look at sin and we think of like the horrible things, right? But there's a ton of other things like just laziness and not being a part of something. I tell my kids all the time, like, you live in this house, you're a part of this household. It takes all of us to make this household successful. And the reason why I want them to learn that is because everywhere they go, they're going to be a contributor to society. They're going to be a contributor to something. And that translates to everything that we do in life. It translates to here. We're a contributor to this church. We all do something, man. And that's kind of what I was talking about at the beginning. Like, to me, it's so humbling to, like, see the things that people do, man. Huge shout out to Nat and Zeke. Like, huge shout out. Because I think about this. I actually think about it a lot. Like, the stuff that they've done and that they've put together. And not only that they're teaching their kids. Like, I see EJ show up with them, and they're rolling out the wire to get the camera set up and to get the internet where they need to get it. And they're contributors here, and they show up. And it's such great habits to put forth where they're going to be successful and and just be successful in what they do. Now, I'll tell you what. Not having freedom, when you're irresponsible with your freedom, it creates a lot of baggage, man. It does. It creates a lot of baggage. The story of redemption, it's not just Jesus' story that he taught. It's throughout the whole Bible. Everywhere you look, it's redemption. You look at Joseph, he was a slave. He was a prisoner. He got redemption. You look at David, he set some dude up to die because he had a crush on his wife. You know what I mean? And he finds redemption. Everywhere you go, you look at Paul the Apostle who wrote this, and this guy killed Christians. That was his job. He killed Christians. And then he goes on to write most of the New Testament and talk about Christ. The whole thing is about redemption. And that's what freedom is. Freedom gives us redemption. It gives you that opportunity to be like, you know what? I've messed up. I carry this stuff with me. But Christ has given me freedom. Christ has given me redemption. If we jumped over to verse 13 on this. You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh. I'm going to stop right there. I remember, still to this day, I think about, what am I going to do when I grow up? You know, these guys are looking at me like, when you grow up, you're grown up. How much more grown up can you get? But I think about that now. Like, I'm almost 40, and I think about it like, what do I want to do when I grow up? Like, this isn't it. I want to do more. There's more things I want to do. You know what I mean? And when I think about my kid, I remember being young, and when I was young, I mean, I fulfilled that. Like, all I wanted to do was have a family from a young age. I don't know why that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a family. And you guys right here, I was your guys' age when I met Vanessa, maybe younger than some of you, definitely shorter than these guys over here when I met Vanessa, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to have a family. But for work, for career, always want to know, what has God called me to do? You're ever wondering? It's simple. God's called you to be free. He's called you to be free. And it's something that you could hang on to, because when you're not free, it's something that holds you down. It doesn't have to necessarily be sin, something you're doing wrong, but it could be bitterness. It could be anger. It could be a feeling of not being good enough. Man, those things are crippling. And you walk into places, and it's like people can hear you just dragging those chains around, man, because it impacts all the relationships that you have. You know, when I had to deal with my bad habits and how they were really detrimental to me, I was an angry person. There was a lot of things I had lost in my life. I had lost a job and felt like a failure, man, a complete failure. And that feeling is crippling, and you take that with you everywhere you go, and you view life through that lens of just, things are horrible. You know, have you ever met someone like that, where just you talk to them about something and they're like, yeah, but that's not gonna, this is horrible. I was that person, and no one told me. I had to figure that out on my own, that I was that person. And I'll tell you what, that's something hard to do, to be an adult and to be like, man, you're negative. You don't have friends simply because no one wants to be around you. That's why you don't have friends. People don't want to be around you. And those are hard habits to break. And that's why I tell you guys that it doesn't matter really what you do. It doesn't. Right now, it doesn't matter what you do. I know everything, social media, everything's like, life is short. You only live once. You only have one life. Man, life is you've got time. I'll tell you that right now. You've got time, okay? Like, let me just break this down. I'm 37 years old. I lived with my parents till I was 17. About to turn 18, I lived with my parents, okay? Those years don't count. That's 17 years of my life that just do not count. I've had 20 years where I've been alive, and then I start thinking about how many years I have left. I'm going to be at least 80. You know, that's another 40-some years. That's double the amount of time that I've been since I've been out of my parents. Like, that's how I think. Like, I got a long ways to go. I got a lot of time left. I could change a lot of things in my life. There's still a lot of things I can do. I can go back to school. I could do something else. I could do whatever. I'm telling you guys have so much time. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's the habits that you form. It's your daily routine. It's getting up in the morning and striving. Like, man, you look at, when it talks about Jesus in Hebrews, it says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's consistent. He's consistent, you know, and we're made in his image and called to be like him. You're called to be consistent, to show up every day, to do what you're supposed to do. And when you do those things, it keeps you from doing the things you're not supposed to do. Because all you guys are called to do is to be free. And with that comes responsibility. Here's the next thing. It says, but do not use your freedom to indulge in the flesh. A lot of people have a lot of frustration with organized religion in general, right? Like, I have lots of friends that are like, religion is just used to control you, to get you to do what you want to do. And you look at this and you're like, well, does it? But I'll tell you what, we get so caught up on the things we're not supposed to do. But I'm telling you, if you just do the things you're supposed to do, You're not even going to have time to do the things you're not supposed to do. That's the truth. I know there's, how many parents are in here? Parents, we got a lot of parents? I'm telling you, talk to mom or dad. Parents, is there enough time in the day? There's not enough time in the day, man. You go to work, you get up, you go to work, you come home. There's stuff to do around the house. You've got your kids doing stuff, whether it's sports, whatever, you got to get to that. And then at the end of the day, you're like, man, I'm tired. There's not enough time in the day. When you're doing the things you're supposed to do, there's not enough time to do the things you're not supposed to do. So freedom, one, it's truth that sets us free. The main thing. Let me go back. I have it here somewhere. Truth is what sets us free. Consistency and responsibility is what maintains our freedom. And then finally, freedom allows us to fulfill the teachings of Jesus. And so here, going on, it says, rather serve one another humbly in love. For the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. There's another time where they're trying to trick Jesus and like, hey, Jesus, there's all these rules. What's the most important one, right? What's the most important one? And Jesus says something so clever. He just says, love God with everything that you have, and then love other people like you love yourself. And that's it. And it's so profound, and Paul picks up on that. And this is what he's talking about. He goes, that commandment that Jesus said, love other people as yourself, that fulfills everything. And when you start thinking about the commandments that God gave us what to do, right? Don't lie, don't steal, don't do this. You don't do those things to yourself. You know what I mean? And if you treat other people how you treat yourself, you know, think about it. When you're in a conversation, you're talking about something, and there's an opportunity to brag about yourself, we all do it, right? Oh, yeah, I did this. I was playing basketball. I scored X amount of points. No one could guard me, right? For me, it's not basketball. For me, it's ping pong. Yeah, I was crushing everybody. You should have seen it. Could have been on ESPN, right? But you say these things no matter what it is, no matter what you do that you're proud of. Man, I'll tell you what, people, Nat and Zeke were making fun of me forever because when I finally got my head on straight and went to school, I was getting good grades. And for me, it was a big thing because I always sucked at school. I always got Ds. That was my thing. Like, if I could just get a D, I could graduate. Like, I graduated with like a 1.4 or something like that. Like, I had the worst That was my thought process. Like, and when I got to high school, I think I was kind of smart because I would sit there and the teacher would hand out the syllabus and the points, and I would do all that pre-math. Like, I would get home and I'd figure out what I needed to do, what percentage I needed to get, so where I could just get a D in the class, okay? I could skip these assignments. That's 100.1. That one's a big one. I need to do that one. At least get 75 points out of that. And when I finally, and I was a mess, and when I finally, like, here I am in my 30s, going to school and finally getting good grades, I was so proud of it. And Nat would make fun of me. There's Paul with his talking about his GPA, and I'm like, I'm sorry. But I'll tell you what, when you love other people how you love yourself, you're going to brag about other people like that. You are. You're going to be like, man, you should have seen my dude out there on the court. He was crushing everybody. I couldn't keep up with them. Man, my dude's outfit today, you look good. You look really good. Hey, I saw what you're doing earlier. You know what I mean? When you treat other people like that, like you treat yourself, you're not going to have to worry about treating people wrong, because you're going to be treating them the right way. But more importantly than that, when you experience freedom, when you experience the freedom that God gives you just for the sake that you can be free and have the choices, and you're responsible with it, and you walk in it, you're going to want to share that with the people that you love. You're going to want them to experience the freedom that you have. You're going to want them to experience that. I'm going to call Jonathan up here to close this out, and I don't know that what you came in here today with. I don't know anything about you, a lot of you. I don't know what you deal with on your own. I don't know the things that might hold you back or might try to trap your mind or try to keep you from being whatever it is. But I'll tell you this, that's not what God wants for you. He wants you to be free. He wants you to live in that freedom, and he wants you to share that freedom with others.